All right, welcome back, everybody. We're starting a new book titled Endurance, authored by Alfred Lansing. So John chose this book, and in this episode, we're going to talk about part one. This book is broken up into 7 parts. So what we're going to cover today is part one, some interesting things we found from it. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment down below.
Smash that like button.
On all our social media platforms. It'll be down in the description below. We got a Spotify, man. Are you on our Spotify? If not, what the fuck are you doing?
Smash that like button.
Get on it. We want to hear from you. We want to connect with y'all. So let's get into it. A little bit of a summary to get us into it. John's going to take over the reins for that.
Let's go. Part 1. The order to abandon ship was given at 5 p.m. For most men, however, no order was needed because by then everyone knew that the ship was done and that it was time to give up trying to save her. There was no show of fear or even apprehension. They had fought unceasingly for 3 days and they had lost. And they accepted their defeat. They simply were too tired to care. The date is October 27th, 1915. Position of the ship, roughly 69 degrees south, 51 degrees west. Deep in the icy wasteland of the Antarctic treacherous Weddell Sea. The ship was being crushed, not all at once, but slowly, a little at a time. 10 million tons of ice was driving in against her. The ship that had a 350 horsepower steam engine in its length, 140 feet overall, her frames double thick, ranging from 9 to 11 inches. The Endurance was built for this voyage. The Endurance was not just rugged, it was crafted in a famous Norwegian shipyard and was sought as a pet project among the builders, and it being possibly the last boat of its kind. This boat that was built for this voyage is now described by crew members as a dying animal screaming in pain from all the noise the ship is making, being slowly crushed to pieces. The men successfully abandoned ship, bringing all possible supplies they can, including 69 Huskies and 3 lifeboats, firewood, food, and tents. Now one man has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders concerning 27 men. The captain of the ship, Ernest Shackleton. Few men have borne the responsibility Shackleton did at that moment. He now, with his crew, floating on ice floes, floating in the sea, who, for all practical purposes, are alone in the frozen Antarctic Sea. They have no radio transmitter, there's no helicopters or snowcats, no suitable planes. If they were to get out and survive, they had to do it themselves. Shackleton estimates that the nearest land was 210 miles away, but unfortunately, that island was inhabited by neither human or animals and offered nothing in relief or benefit to the crew. The nearest known place where they might at least find food and shelter was a teeny Paulet island less than 1.5 miles in diameter, which lay 346 miles away. The book then backtracks in the story. In time before the journey has even started. It goes into detail of Captain Shackleton, his journey playing politician in order to get funds to see his journey through. He persuades his home country in England into donating a large sum, reminding them that the English are the best known explorers and they shouldn't miss out on the last great conquest, that is the Antarctic. He mortgaged the expedition in a sense by selling in advance the rights to whatever commercial property the expedition might produce. He promised to write a book about the trip. He even sold the rights to a motion picture and agreed to tour and give lectures regarding the voyage. And all these arrangements made to help secure enough capital, all had one basic assumption, that he would survive. Picking the crew, Shackleton built the crew around a nucleus of 6 tested veterans of the sea. Most, if not all of those 6 had sailed with him on previous expeditions and have built trust and respect among each other. In the manner of selecting newcomers, Shackleton's methods would appear unorthodox, if not downright unrational. If he liked the look of a man, he was accepted. If he didn't, the matter was closed. These decisions were made with lightning speed. Despite the instantaneous nature of these decisions, Shackleton's intuition for selecting compatible men rarely failed. The early months of 1914 were spent acquiring the countless items of equipment and gear that would be needed for the expedition. Shackleton now being introduced as a man unwilling to succumb to the demands of everyday life. With this insatiable excitement and unrealistic ventures left him open to being accused of being immature and irresponsible. And very possibly he was. But the great leaders of history have rarely fitted any conventional mold. And perhaps it's an injustice to evaluate them to such a standard. There can be little doubt that Shackleton in this way was an extraordinary leader of men. A quote from one of his men, "For scientific leadership, give me Scott. For swift and effectiveness, give me Osmond. But when you are in a hopeless situation and there seems no way out, get down on your knees and pray to Shackleton." October 26, 1914. They leave their last port along the South America, and they start their journey towards the Antarctic. The long years of preparation were over. The begging, the hypocrisy, the finagling were all finished. The simple act of sailing had carried him beyond the world of reversals and frustrations. In the space of a few short hours, life had been reduced from a highly complex existence with 1,000 petty problems to one of the barest simplicity in which only one real task remained, the achievement of the goal. Shackleton's diary wrote, "Now comes the actual work itself. The fight will be good." November 5th, 1914. The Endurance arrives at Rivkin Whaling Station, South Georgia. There he received depressing news from the whaling captains concerning the ice conditions of the Weddell Sea. While never good, they were being reported as the worst they had ever seen. Many of the whaling skippers tried to persuade Shackleton to wait and try crossing the Weddell Sea the following year in hopes of better conditions. He did not listen. 6 p.m., December 7th. The Endurance is passing between Saunders Island and Candlemea's volcano. There, for the first time, they encounter the enemy. It was only a small patch of ice, which the ship dodged without difficulty, but 2 hours later, they came up against a band of heavy packed ice, several feet thick and half a mile wide. They then spend more than 12 hours searching along the edge for a passage through the ice. Finally, they do so, and they start to navigate through the ice. Several times, the Endurance is smashed head-on into the floes, but no damage is done. For 2 weeks, the Endurance twists and squirms her way through the pack. Frequently, she was barely able to push her way through, and sometimes she was stopped altogether, and they had to heave until the ice was loosened, but it was progress. January 24th, the Endurance was bested, stuck in the ice, a quote from one of the sailors, frozen like an almond in the middle of a chocolate bar. What had happened was simple enough. The northerly gales had compressed and crowded the whole Weddell Sea pack against the face of the land, and no force on earth could open up the ice again, except another gale from the opposite direction. But instead of southerly gales, there was only moderate winds. Day after day, the crew systematically tried to cut away the ice with saws and picks to relieve the ship, but it was no use. One man writes in his diary, "Anyways, if we do get jammed here for the winter, we shall have the satisfaction of knowing that we did our darndest to try to get out." Their time was running out. Their time was running out. They noticed the approaching end of the Antarctic summer on February 17th, 1915, when the sun, which had shone 24 hours a day for 2 months, dipped beneath the horizon for the first time at midnight. They decide to winter on board the ship and wait out until the start of spring, where maybe the ice will start to break up and they can continue their journey. The bitter realization that the Imperial Transatlantic Expedition chances of succeeding, while always uncertain, now were 1,000 times more problematic. Shackleton, careful to not betray his crew, to disappoint his crew, cheerfully supervised the routine of readying the ship for the long winter nights ahead. Dogs were removed off the ship and onto the floes of ice and into dog glues, built out of ice blocks and snow. After transitioning the ship into a floating shore station ready for the winter, they christened their new quarters the Ritz. The men spent their time in the early part of the winter hunting seals and penguins, creating a stockpile of meat and blubber to help make up for lost coal used trying to escape the ice. To fight off boredom, men often made different hunting games, race challenges involving different dog sledding teams and captains. Early May, the sun appeared over the horizon for the last time. Now, all they were left with was darkness and sub-freezing temperatures. All life had vanished. There was no longer seals or penguins to hunt. Winter had officially begun. In all the world, there is no desolation more complete than the polar night. It is the return of the ice age. No warmth, no life, no movement. Only those who have experienced it can fully appreciate what it means to be without sun, day after day, week after week. Few men can accustom to it, can fight off its effects altogether, and has even driven some men mad. By coincidence, a man aboard the Endurance had been stranded in the Weddell Sea aboard another ship called the Belicia in 1899 in a similar circumstance. They talk about how the crew became infected with deep depression and anxiety. They took to walking in circles around the stuck ship to fight off madness. One man died from heart ailment brought on from the terror of the night. Another was convinced his crew was out to kill him. On the other hand, there was very little depression aboard the Endurance. The polar night only seemed to bring the men closer. Camaraderie was at an all-time high. They entertained themselves with plays. They would act out together, songs to sing, bets being made, the group all cutting each other's hair, and of course, playful pranks on each other. The average temperature during this time was negative 17 degrees. On July 14th, the bottom fell out the glass of the barometer, a sign marking one of the worst days in winter. 70-mile-an-hour winds screamed through and lashed out at anything it touched. The temperature was negative below freezing. The aftermath of this strong snowstorm left what was once a huge floe of ice miles long into many fragmented pieces, and for the first time, setting the Endurance free. But this actually became a hazard. Up until now, they had been safe from pressures of ice slamming them. Now they were surrounded by multiple floes ready to barrage them and cause damage. Now in August, the ship may take many barrages of ice, once even getting itself lifted out of the water due to pressure. Every time the boat creaks and groans, and the men wonder if this will be the deafening blow to end the ship. But time and time again, the Endurance proves itself to be tough and ready to take on the challenge, always coming out unscathed. One man describes the Endurance after these events in his diary as the finest little wooden vessel ever built, showing his trust in their ship. Unfortunately, October 23 marks the start of the end for the Endurance. A pressure comes, and this time punctures the Endurance. Now we are where we started, with Shackleton giving the orders that it's over and it's time to abandon ship. That's it.
Phenomenal.
All right.
Nice summary, John. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she was nice.
Hell yeah. So that kind of brings us to some points that we wanted to mention in the book, some key takeaway points. So John had mentioned, it's in chapter 5, of part 1, where the author Alfred Lansing mentions the Belgica or Belgica, however it is mentioned, but it's a naval expedition down to Antarctica in 1899. And he talks about how the crew went mad, right? There was one of them that became delirious, that he thought his crewmates were going to try and kill him. One of them died with a heart ailment because, he was scared of the dark and other things like that. Mm. Plus other ones giving way to hysteria, just becoming like dumbfounded and couldn't really articulate themselves. Mm. So I think it was a really good story as to what can happen when you're in a secluded environment with no light and only your thoughts. So what was interesting is that they were stuck in this polar night, the same polar night that drove the Belgica crew crazy, right? But there was little depression aboard the Endurance. And so I have a question here. Why do you think that is? So John covered a lot of that, right? Which was they all shaved their heads as like a camaraderie type behavior as a crew, right? If the two of you guys have shaved heads, all right, let's everybody shave their heads, right? Then they have pranks. How many of you guys have been a part of a sports team or part of some sort of, growing up where you would prank each other, right? Mm-hmm. That just builds like that camaraderie. They had regular social occasions where they drink and discuss and sing and have good times. Mm-hmm. And so the men aboard the Endurance developed camaraderie, friendship, shared activities, and memories that brought them closer together. So living in such quarters, the men got to know each other and knew they could depend on each other. So a question that we're going to be asking is, in a circumstance where men may crumble, the Endurance crew was able to stay positive and proactive. What can we extract from their camaraderie to apply to our own lives? Who would like to go first?
I think I'll keep mine pretty short and simple because I think thinking back to Jordan Peterson's book, I forget what the chapter is called, but it's listen to someone.
Assume the person you're listening
has something to say.
Knows something that you don't.
Yeah, and I think that plays a big part in this crew, in my own life as well. But identifying that to the crew, and then how I could identify what I could take to be applicable. But how I identify that into the crew is these men a couple months ago, 8 months ago, 9 months ago, didn't even know each other that well. They're traveling on an expedition that's going across the country in frozen lands where they might not make it back to their families, but they're willing to take that chance to do history, to make history. Mm-hmm. And I think being in a situation where a lot of people will probably never get to experience, where the sun doesn't come up for multiple days on end, it's I don't know how to visualize that or how to even put that into words, but I can see people going crazy because the sun provides something to us as human beings. But as far as them being creative, because that's a lot of the creativeness they had, the plays, the shaving the heads, like thinking of the shaving the heads first, seeing not your friends, not your associates, but random dude, like people that you're stuck on a ship with come with shaved heads and you guys all decide to like, it's funny, let's shave all our heads. Like that's a real connection without it being so deep and so like integral. It's something simple, funny. And now you look around, it's like, none of us have hair anymore. And it's a simple message. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You want to say something, John?
Well, at that point when they shaved their heads, they had been together for like 9 months or some shit.
Yeah.
I haven't even been at my workplace for 9 months, and I already have like a pretty strong relationship with a good amount of my coworkers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, and I only see them, let's call it 7.5 hours out of the day. Imagine spending 24 hours a day, 9 months together. You guys become pretty close, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the shaving the heads thing is a big like mood lightener, you know, because normally when you meet people for the first time, you're normally dressed the best. You're trying to like put on airs a little bit. You're trying to be like the best version of yourself. Hey, bro, we all look kind of stupid with shaved heads. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a meaningful message, but at the same time, it's simple and silly. It's not methodical. It's not thought out. They just did it just for shits and giggles, but it brought them a lot closer. And then I think one area I would like to, I guess how that's applicable to my life and how I would see myself moving forward in the, I guess, an analogy or metaphorical sense of how I would apply what they took to my life is, I guess the example you gave me, Jay, like our business, kind of find ways to adapt with each other and integrate the fun side and shine light on things that we lack and kind of make ourselves feel, not ourselves, but make each other feel as if like, you're not strong here. This isn't your strong suit, but we got you. Like, we're not going to let this collapse because you're not strong enough to hold up your own piece. We're going to hold it up until we can all move together. And I think that's a big message in this whole summary of when they're doing the shits and giggles and the plays and even the dog races. Like, that part had me like cracking up. But when they have the dog races and they're like betting against each other.
Yeah.
One thing I want to note is that part of it is not that like, hey, if you don't get it, we'll make up for it. Is that it states in the book often that not only did the men do what was required of them, they had no problem doing like doubling down and doing double that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because it came down to, if I didn't do it, it'd be more work for somebody else. So let's all double down. And they all, let's say person A can only do in a metric of 2 and person B can do 4. Person A is doing 4, person B is doing 8, right? They're each doing double down the most that they can do, and everyone respects that out of them, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's I like the clarification. Like, I think what I kind of identify is sort of in that, but not because they have an actual crew that they have people that have actually done this. I'm not saying everybody on the ship knows exactly their part and stuff. And yeah, obviously they're going to need to double down because it's a big ass ship. It's a huge, like, you know what I mean? A vessel. I think putting it into a smaller context, because I think me, Mark, and Doug have all run into problems where we're not strong at something. And I think we've all just kind of, just one day we would just be like, we're not letting the ship sink. We're not letting the ship collapse. Even if we have to go to 0, even if we have to restart, we know we're going to fuck up. We know we're going to make mistakes. If you're doubling down, we all got to double down. If you feel like you're slowing down, let's all slow down and like figure out what's going to speed you back up. Gotcha. I think just moving as a complete unit is what I took from them moving as a unit when they kind of just sat down and not in a sense got to know each other, but they really did. Yeah. You know what I mean? With
and
the
that
stories
whole,
and all that.
That whole moving as a team sort of points back to 7 Habits, right? So interdependence, that whole idea of being a team player and not necessarily being so independent that you're just not helping the team.
Yeah.
Right.
Become like a what's the word, like a fucking, like you become an anchor that's slowing everybody down because you think you're so, and you run everything rather than actually like incorporating yourself with everybody. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's that. I feel like mine was pretty simple. I think to summarize it, move as a unit. Don't like David said, don't try and be so independent in everything. Yeah, there's areas of life where you can be really strongly independent and not focus on anybody else. But I think life is about relationships and moving together as a unit. So I think that's the biggest thing I took away from that part.
All right.
Dope.
Okay, just something that I pulled from that, something that I think helps. This crew's all men. Something that I pulled from another book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yeah.
The author talks about how men end up growing a better relationship with each other through activities.
Mm-hmm.
I think one great thing is that the men often made competitive challenges with each other, right? For them to be physical, be smart, lead a dog sledding team. And through these activities, they're able to bond more. And they continually pump out activities for them to do to try to negate maybe what's crawling in the back of their mind, right?
Yeah.
So in that aspect, at your workplace, what are things that you can do that aren't the bare minimum at work that can help bring a little bit more of camaraderie or relationship that after doing so helps the workplace relationship, right?
Right.
For example, like I'm trying to get my team right now for us to all to go bowling after work one day because it's an activity.
That'd be so fun.
I like bowling. You get drinks, you get food. We have girls on our team, and in that book, it talks about how women bond more over talking, and just gossip is a good way to just quickly say it.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about how bowling would be good because there's a little bit of competition. It's an activity, so the men are happy, but it's enough chill time where the women can talk and stuff. And I think that it's an overall building of a relationship. And the men do that without thinking about it because they don't want to be bored, because they don't want to think about what could be, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they stay busy being competitive and doing things together.
Yeah, staying in nature.
Shout out
What
to
was
you.
the title of that book again?
Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
I think we need to read that book, The Irrational Male, and then The Superior Man.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I'll
Beyond
put,
that fucking men shit.
Jeez.
oh my god.
How about you, David?
Um,
What'd you take away? What can we extract from their camaraderie to apply to our lives?
what I like is it made me think of a book that we read. If you've been following along with us, those of you watching, is Nice Bike. Did we didn't record that one, huh?
I don't think so.
Damn it. Okay, never mind.
Nice bike, dope guy. Shout out Nice Bike.
It's a good book. Maybe we'll cover that book in the
Double
future.
back, maybe.
Or maybe some videos on that one. But it's the whole idea of making people feel like they're in a sense of a community, right? Making people feel heard, acknowledged, and that they belong to their community. And I think that was going on this ship despite this devastating circumstance that they had found themselves in. And Shackleton, being the leader, he pretty much was supportive of everything happening. And the cook was in on some pranks. Like everybody was doing something that made them feel like, even if we're in this situation, we're all in this together. And they chose to be proactive, have fun, share some stories. They played soccer. They put bets on the dogs. I think that's what sort of kept them alive in a sense, because the other, what was that?
Belisa?
That was a scenario, but they didn't touch on even if that sense of community or camaraderie between the teammates happened there. So it could have been a factor to where people wouldn't have gone so insane,
Well, it's just interesting that the guy was aboard both ships, and on this ship he was fine, right?
Right.
But on the last ship he was going crazy. Like, what's the difference?
Yeah, maybe I don't know. I think one thing is if you look at people's lifestyles now today, you have people that kind of find that work-life balance, that try to mitigate the work life, like try to suffocate themselves and trying to promote, get up the ladder, and they never find time to just take a minute and relax and go have some friends and kick back and forget
or even
about
have
so
your
serious.
coworkers, in a sense, just build a strong relationship there.
Yeah.
With my work, I really am very supportive, and I I love my art director, Trevor. Shout out to Trevor if he listens to this. He's an art director for my team who are designers, and he plans events, kind of like how John was saying about the bowling thing. He's like, let's go. One time he just straight up surprised us. He's like, hey guys, I got us all reservations for Quail State. Let's go get some food and get some drinks. And I was like, this is so dope. It feels like he's my friend.
Right.
He's just going to be like, let's go hang out, And a lot of people that I work with at Bitwise, they have that sense of community and they express it onto others. And I think that's why it's a really successful company just from the culture alone, because everybody feels like they're heard, everybody feels acknowledged, and that they contribute to something that's great. And I think it's awesome. Everybody is really, really dope there.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah.
So for myself, I'm currently in a position where camaraderie is not the biggest thing. You're kind of given a subject that it's your subject. And if somebody wants to kind of talk about it, they can talk about it. But it's kind of like solo thing.
Okay.
But I've been attending like mapping trips, field work, where camaraderie and like teamwork is basically necessary in order to kind of do it. For those of you guys who do backpacking or any type of hiking, you know how much of a team effort it really is to get to a destination. And the same thing applies to the field work. So, we have people that came to our department from out of state that don't really know much about mapping or outdoor anything really. So understanding that it's a team effort where one person's lacking, you kind of supplement that. Kind of like along the lines of what you were saying, where you got to move as a unit, right? Like where you're weak, I can supplement, and where I'm weak, you can supplement. And so seeing how that can really develop a team. So even just on the last trip, there's talk about, the Laguna this, Laguna that, Laguna this, Laguna that. There's a sense of camaraderie where you go through something that most people don't go through that builds like this community of people that were there. It's like almost like developing an inside joke. Yeah. And so
you had to be there.
You had to be there to get it. And so the people that weren't on the Laguna trip, they're going to build their own thing, right? The Sonol thing. But the people that were there in Laguna, we talk about it, but it built like this community where like, okay, we're mapping. We know how to conduct each other with each other. We know how we all operate. I can supplement you. You can supplement me. Let's get this goal achieved. And so it's interesting to see it in an Arctic circumstance. It's I can even see it in my own life in some certain aspects. So extracting that into my own life, I would like to build some sense of camaraderie in my circle at school or at work, but it's kind of tough. So I can't give you the clearest answer to this, but I could see where it emulates itself in my life. Yeah.
You can see the benefits of
it.
it.
So let's just say this upcoming summer, we're planning on hiking to the top of Mount Whitney, understanding that it is just us out there depending on each other, and you have to have a sense of camaraderie because you're not getting up that hill alone, right? It's a team effort. So, and I shouldn't even say hill, it's a goddamn mountain. But hill. That's where I can extract that and put it into my personal life.
Do you think there's ways that you could try and work on that circle of influence, or what you could do? Or do you feel like this is sort of like an indirect control sort of thing, right? Like where you can try and build that sense of camaraderie? Is it with your students, or is it more of like your mapping teams? Or
for me personally, so masters, you're given an idea, or you come up with an idea. My idea isn't close to anybody else's really. Aurora's part of the Waka crew. Victoria's a part of the Waka crew, but they're all studying something different. There's 3 different aspects to this whole thing called the Franciscan, right? It's an origin. So mine is different than hers, which is different than hers. So, I mean, we're involved in each other's work, but when I'm like, oh yeah, so the Skaggs brings this, that's kind of like, yeah, whatever you say kind of thing, because it's its own little
I just want to kind of touch on that, Jay. Yeah. I mean, where I'm coming from, I'm the welding teacher. Nothing I do is a part of what anyone else does. Mm-hmm. Like, there's like carpentry, materials and processing, math, science. But in the same sense, for you guys are all geologists, right? You guys all work at the same place and are at least in the same circle. There's definitely ways you can connect where the bridge doesn't seem too far away. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And whatever it is, back to Nice Bike with David, like how can you extend your arm over the fence to be maybe on their side of the field so they see that you're there, you're part of them, even though you have your own thing, which is what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You're still part of like your guys's
class
vibe, your science department. You know, you guys are a part of a team, all have your own parts, you know?
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing that we've done is kind of along the activities line. Aurora, her husband, Nick, Chelsea, me, Nadine, Jeremy, Lex, we climb, right? We go to the climbing gym. So there's an activity we do.
Nice.
That's shared, you know, but
that's awesome.
And I think too, it might be different in the sense that your work is like your thing that you're spending a lot of time, and then to have someone sort of be like the help, it's like you said, like we trust what you're doing because that's the thing that you chose to do on the Franciscan, right? You know what I mean? It
could be as small as just eating lunch together with them like a couple times a week. You know, I think about it. Out of the whole group of the teachers at my center, let's say call it 12, I'm really close to like 6 because we all eat lunch together and we just talk and bullshit every day a little bit, you know, for 20 minutes, right? But we're not teachers, we're just fucking people talking, right? About kids. I don't fucking have kids. Let me talk to me about your fucking kid, you know? All sorts of shit.
You know,
but it makes you human.
Yeah. You know what's interesting too? And maybe this kind of plays into the discussion is I was listening to a podcast on the future one time, and Christo sort of describes that we'd rather take advice from people who are friends than people that like who aren't our friends or we don't really know, or even if it's the right advice, you know. So having a sense of camaraderie with your friends or your work relationships or school, it's good to build friends because you can probably get some better advice or maybe a more trusting relationship versus like if you're on your own thing and it's like you're doing over there, maybe they could be showing you something beneficial, but you're not taking it as something. It's a little bit different, you know, because
or just some pull. Like let's say the day comes up where Jay wants to ask for more money to further his scientific research, and he's got Aurora and these other people backing him up because he's kind of built some camaraderie to him. Where if he didn't go climb with them, if he didn't go grab lunch with them, and he's asking for money, they're like, "Oh, do we really have to back Jay up? Like, fuck him, you know? I want the money, you know?"
Yeah. That's kind of a position we're getting put into right now as well.
Real quick, I want to read this before I forget. Okay, so guys, just by coincidence, because I love Twitter, this thing popped on my Twitter, and it just so happened to be it's a job posting in 1913. I'm going to read it. Okay, men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success. Ernest Shackleton. So it's literally out of a newspaper. He's like, "Hey guys, honestly, I can't give you anything, and the best that can happen is we succeed. If we succeed.
Make it back alive."
You know what's crazy too is people saw that ad and they're like, "Fuck it, let's do it."
What's crazy is he said he was flooded with volunteers. Right? They saw the ad that go, "I want to be a great man." Just for the journey.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Dude.
Crazy.
I would have put men and women, especially when women underlined it wanted for that trip, boy.
If you saw that ad, I would say, fuck that. I'm heated house. Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, right next to a posting that's like an actual job.
Right.
Yeah. You're like,
yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. Is there any other key takeaways you guys have?
I would say this whole part, I'm really interested to see what they talk about next. I think there's going to be a lot more intrinsic detail with how they mentally got through all of this. But this beginning part, it's filled with a lot of description of the ship, how the water seeped in, how long they were. One thing I would like to point out is how long they were stuck in one spot for, like on period of like from end to end, like 9 months in one spot, and then they broke out of it and they got stuck again, right? And that 9 months or whatever, it was all winter, so it was dark and cold as shit. Couldn't really do anything. When the sun starts to come out, the whole time they're running into big ice floes, breaking through shit. Like it's not a smooth sail the whole time. And they've been out on the Weddell Sea for about close to 2 years now, and the ship finally gets stuck, or like a year and a half.
It's a year. They leave 1914, and then coming at the end of 1915,
Oh my God.
they abandoned
Stuck.
ship.
Yeah.
Like,
Bro. Fuck.
They were
and
all,
they thought they were gonna be at the destination by December when they left.
And then there's
Yeah.
the part where he talks about where they finally see the sun for the first time, and it's like they're all like, you know, it's good, but they're like, we're still stuck. You know?
Yeah. We're still stuck and like nothing's changed, right? We still got to do our journey. Holy shit, right?
Oh my god, bro,
Crazy.
yeah.
One
Not
thing I
even
want to point out,
halfway
just,
there.
Go ahead.
you know, going off that job posting, this is a crew of extraordinary men. Not many men would sign up for this job.
Yeah.
And then having a group of non-conforming men sometimes comes out not a healthy relationship among them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But somehow the leadership of Shackleton was able to rein them all in to a common goal.
Yeah,
and I'm sure we'll get an insight into that now with like part 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, 5, and so forth.
I'm curious to see some
Totally.
more executive decisions on his part.
Yeah.
Totally.
Moving forward when shit gets really real.
Yeah, so part 1, I think you described it really well. It's some background information. It tells you how the guys all got to know each other, what was going on while the ship was still happening, while they were sailing, some stories and stuff like that. So I think that was really good. So with that, we're going to get up out of here. That was part 1 of Endurance, authored by Alfred Lansing. Go ahead and pick up the book. It's really interesting. It's a story about sailing to Antarctica. I mean, how many stories like that have you heard? Probably 0,
The
right?
greatest
Zero.
story.
You've heard 0.
Right. So before we take off, we want to remind you, subscribe to the channel,
Smash that
like
like
the
button.
video, hit the little bell next to the subscription thing
Smash
so you
the
know
like
when we upload a video. Comment down below. Follow us on all our social media platforms. It'll be down in the description below. We got a Spotify. And if you ain't following us, what the fuck are you doing?
Smash it, bro.
Smash the like button. And we're out of here. But before we take off, make sure you remember that the work you put in now equals who you'll be tomorrow. Peace.
Peace.